We caught up with John here at the Paradox booth at Gamescom, and I saw Naval War a very long time ago, back in January in New York, and you've come a long way since then. Can you describe a little bit what's been going on with the game since?
Well, we spent a lot of time making the engine itself and simulate the world and the units, the ships, the missiles and all the weapons. And around 6 months ago, we started putting emphasis on the user interface and the user interaction of the game. A game like that could theoretically be very complex to play. It could be scary experience, and we emphasize making it easy to get into. So making a very clean and nice user interface and making the interaction logical and simple for the user. So you can get into it, and if you are used to playing an RTS, if you played StarCraft, Command and Conquer, you will know how to operate the game. Obviously we have more complex units, more complex options, but you can get into them. And if you, well, just for an example, if you select your own unit and right click on the enemy, you will get a reasonable response from the game. It will approach that unit and try to shoot it down. If you want to, you can go into the menus and choose which weapon to use and how many and all those details. But we want to ease the player into the game in that way.
Because I do think that your game does appeal to a very hardcore audience as well, so you don't want to take away any of those options.
Absolutely not. We're not taking anything away. We're adding that complexity as depth to the game. So you can start playing before you know what a standard missile can do or what an F-22 is good for. But once you can start learning about these real-life units, and you can start to use them in a more efficient way, whether you're playing against the campaigns or you're playing a multiplayer on the internet.
So the last time I saw the game, it was basically just a working model of how it would look and things like that. Now you're showing off the games to journalists here. What's the feedback been like?
The feedback has been really, really good. We are almost overwhelmed with people saying, oh, that was really clean, that was a very nice user interface. So we're really happy with the feedback, and that's what we wanted to accomplish, showing off that even though we make a reasonably complex game, it's going to be easy to start playing it.
So you mentioned the multiplayer, and I believe that's going to be one of the main attractions of the game. Could you talk us through just a little bit about what that experience will be like?
Yes, multiplayer. Well, naval combat is a bit of a cat and mouse game. It's about hiding your own units and assets and detecting the enemy. And you have a lot of different options available for detecting, and everything you do, like the classical rock, paper, scissors, you have a counter to it. So you can choose to hide all your units, use your stealth craft and so on, and you can choose to use jammers to reduce the effectiveness of enemy radar. You can use decoys to try to fool the enemy into believing you're attacking in one direction while you're really attacking in another. So there is a lot of options available to you, and whatever you do, you exclude something else. Your aircraft have different loadouts, so you choose you want to do a strike against a naval target, you have to re-equip your planes and send them out, and then they will be unavailable for hunting for submarines or engaging other aircraft. So you're making these choices, and you have to second guess what your opponent is doing all the time.
So from a game design perspective, I guess it's important to be clear so that the players know just why they were defeated when they are.
Yes, that's very important. You should never feel that the game deceived you. It should be because you screwed up yourself or the enemy outwitted you. And we want to present the information to the player as much as possible and in a neat way as possible, because it starts off normally in mission, whether in the campaign or when you're playing at multiplayer. It starts off like you're just seeing your own units and you know where the enemy air bases are, and otherwise you don't see anything. And then later in the game, when you start detecting things, you're detecting everything at once, and well, missiles fly in all directions, and
That's when the war starts.
that's when the war starts, and can start and end at a minute, really. We just did the play testing we did in here now, where we have a conveniently placed submarine near an enemy surface task force. That submarine can easily take out every single ship alone and win the war for you, more or less. Obviously, there are counters to submarines, as there always are, but all the units have very specific strengths and weaknesses, and if you play the right way, you can achieve really enormous success without having this death ball you tend to make in other RTS games. So we also do the modeling of the damage as realistically as we can reasonably do, as far as we know, of course.
So that touches on another area of things. It's like when you balance a game and you have realistic weapons, realistic units, they're not perfectly paper, rock, or scissors in reality. So how do you counter that, and what's your number one priority in that case?
Well, we have to instill some level of realism in it, and as you say, sometimes there are weapons that get maybe a bit too powerful for its own good. Obviously, they pay a lot of billions to make these new planes, and they actually, assumingly, do the job. So we can't make units weaker not really weaker than they are in real life. But there are other ways to balance it. For example, the availability and cost of these very powerful units. And we also have a bit of leeway with reality, since we placed in the game in 2030, not to have any science fiction, but also to have the possibility to make some assumptions about, for example, that the enemy is certain to invent better radars, which will, for example, to some degree counter the stealth. That is that's an option we have, at least.
So where are you at in development right now, and when do you plan to be finished?
The game is going to be released in the second quarter of 2012, so we are well on schedule for reaching that target.